Another task that they have to attend to is the domain of the body. It just coming to terms with, first of all, the fact that their body is changing, the hormonal changes that they are going through, and, as you touched on, figuring out their sexual identity. So these are really important parts of adolescence. And when you have gender identity placed on top of it, it unfortunately makes it very easy to avoid this task, avoid coming to terms with your body as it is, because that's a difficult thing to come to terms with. And I see this being really difficult for some of my clients who I think in another era would have presented maybe as like an eating disorder client or something like that. They are now struggling with their gender in their body and not wanting their secondary sex characteristics and not liking how curvy they are. And to me, that sounds a lot like how an eating disorder might have shown up in another time.
And the hatred of the breasts is really notable. And, whether the boys want breasts or the girls hate their breasts, it does feel very much a reflection on the obsession with breasts that has been a constant in our world. Not only are they trying to figure out who am I and what am I and who are my friends and who are my tribe, but they're also trying to figure out what is my sexuality in a world that is kind of obsessed with sexuality. And some of them have none, as far as I can see. They haven't budded, they haven't grown. Others have one that's very influenced by porn, and they can't quite figure out whether their sexual growth or interest is very porn induced, or is it that they followed it. I would just say, if you know anything about porn, and it's worth, any parent who does have an adolescent, it's worth kind of make sure you school yourself a little bit about the porn industry, because the algorithms are such that they continuously invite the person who's watching porn to watch something a little bit darker and a little bit more transgressive. Why? Because the testosterone-fueled brain is seeking novelty. And so the porn industry have figured that out, because frankly, they're geniuses who are trying to make an awful lot of money. And so the algorithms work in a way that they're constantly inviting a slightly more transgressive, more novelty-driven clip the next time. And these adolescents don't realize that they're at the mercy of a huge multi-billion industry. And they're ending up in very dark places. And a lot of adolescents I've met, especially boys, I have to say, but definitely girls, and more often girls, are freaked out and disturbed by the porn they're watching.
And they're desensitized throughout this process. Like when you first discover your physiological arousal, everything can get you aroused. I mean, that's why we have these kind of funny stories of boys in their teenage years. They see, a bra ad and they get an erection, because it's such a minor thing, but to them, it's such a big deal. And by desensitizing your sexuality and what you are aroused by, you are kind of ushering kids into a direction they may not have otherwise gone. And I think, to complicate matters, it's probably hard for us to appreciate how confusing this is. But there's also this kind of social justice angle on top of the sexuality piece that is really common in wherever kids are, like TikTok, Reddit, Tumblr, Discord, whatever. And being, quote, sex positive is considered very important. And look, I am no prude. I've had a crazy kind of life in my own development. But to say that you have to be positive about everything, even if you don't like it, that's probably incredibly confusing and destructive. And one more piece is just that now sexual orientation is framed as being based on gender identity. So imagine, you're 13, 14, you're just starting to masturbate and you're just starting to figure out what you're attracted to. And you go on, let's say, forums, because that's where kids go, just to talk about it or see what other people say. And if you say, I think I like girls, that means you've included transgender girls. And the functional definition of a transgender girl is just any male who says they're a girl. Like, it's not even understood to be transsexual the way we would have thought of a transsexual person when we were younger. So to try and figure out your sexual identity in this youth climate is really, really hard.
And I know that the shame that happens to to teenagers who feel I'm not attracted to somebody and it must mean that I need to kind of re-educate myself because that's non-inclusive and therefore I must be transphobic or there must be something wrong with me. And it does feel that in a bid to kind of free ourselves, we've really gone into children who are really not free. They're in agony. They're in an awful lot of pain. I really think they're in an awful lot of pain, sadly, about their gender identity and about their sexuality, when of all times in all of history, we could be the most liberated. It could be a lovely stage. How are adolescents having such a crappy introduction to their sexuality and their identity? We really have lost it.
It's really tough. I mean, I've heard clients of both sexes, female clients and male clients, talk about feeling like their attractions are predatory, you know? So there's all kinds of confusion. I mean, I think a lot of young people, as their sexuality develops, do have some shame around it, like the shame of arousal, the shame of feeling sexually attracted to somebody. But I think young people today are really not able to enjoy the excitement and exhilaration of being attracted because there's also this kind of guilt placed on top of that. And on the other hand, they are kind of ushered into sexual explorations that they're probably not actually interested in because of the labels and definitions. So it's really mixed up. It's a very confusing place to be working through this task.